can hear me, correct? One of the problems with Zoom is you never know what you're really saying. You could be muted and not know it. Coronavirus is going to end in a few months, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, maybe a year, but it's coming. And the world has changed. Is your club ready? Because I believe most clubs are going to be hybrid clubs from now on, except for the prison clubs. It's so much easier to dial in. Zoom meetings these days are super easy. We're getting really good at Zoom meetings. But a hybrid is a mix of a live meeting and a hybrid, and it's got the worst of both worlds. I'm going to show you what we did at Smile, because about 2.5 years ago, we lost our lease, so to speak. We had a few hours warning and we were out of the building. And we had to use Zoom. And thank heavens, SEA had done some research for us. And when we returned to our new venue, which was Station Square, we immediately went to hybrid meetings. And this, oh, little technical difficulty. I wasn't quite as prepared. There. This is essentially what we had for a speaking layout. The little gray area is our speaking area. And we just put a camera in the back of the room. It worked really well, but the people online, guests and members, they couldn't really participate. They could only watch. Now, as I'm going to ask the audience, what, if you've attended a hybrid meeting, what are the most irritating things? What are the biggest problems? But first, I'm going to address the audio because that's my biggest beef. Sometimes you just can't understand the speaker, and when they give a speech, if you can't understand the speech, it's kind of useless. Sometimes it's that the laptop just isn't loud enough. A lot of laptops, maybe most laptops, don't have very good sound. You may not need something as big as I have on this speaker, or this great big guitar amplifier. It is entirely too much equipment to bring to a meeting. And that's always the big problem with a meeting, is how much stuff do you want to bring? We want to balance what we need and what we have to have. And how much time do you want to set up? Another problem, big problem, is the microphone. These are some really nice microphones. The one on the left is a $25,000 microphone. Is it going to sound any better than the $20 lavalier that Terry has on? It depends on where you put it. It probably won't sound any better if you have it in the wrong place. And we have discovered through Smile that the cheap little lavalier like I have right here, and this one was thrown away, I just kind of fixed it. So it's a $0 microphone. If I put it in the right place, it's immensely better than a $1,000 microphone, just because it needs to be close. And Station Square is a very lively room. It's wooden floors, glass windows everywhere. And if you're more than a couple of feet away from the microphone, you cannot understand it at all. And I believe the Toastmaster's job, when they're not in the room, I did this last week. When somebody made a comment in the back, we couldn't hear it. And I said, could you please translate that for us? And Terry did such a good job for her first time being the, we call her the Zoom master because she ran the laptop the whole thing. And she did a good job. And she handed the mic back and then it sounded great. And when the mic is close, we can understand it. And if it's far away, it's terrible. Now I'm going to ask the audience, what issues have you found in hybrid meetings? What bothers you? Anyone? Steve.
When I'm speaker, I want to see and hear my audience, both the audience that may be in the same location and my audience that is remote from wherever I happen to be broadcasting from.
Yes. I was, excuse me, I always thought that this would be the ideal setup. You could have the lectern and the monitor in the same place. That's assuming you have a big screen monitor. But there's a fatal flaw with this setup. The audience gets to see everything. The speaker can't see the timer if they're online and can't see the online guests. And if you're online, well, it depends where we put the cameras. Anyone else have a irritating part of hybrid meetings? It's just something we need to work on.
Since we're working from home, the family, the dog, the house noises.
Yes. Close miking will help that, and muting your microphone. If you get your mic closer, then our voice is louder, hopefully, than the dog a little bit. The visual aspect, I have 4 things on my screen here. Can we see the speaker? Seeing the audience, I guess it depends on if you're online, but this is my thought. I want to be able to see all of the audience. So putting the screen in a place that the speaker can see it is just as important as the audience seeing the monitor. Better yet, use 2 monitors. It's so good to be able to see the facial expression, and that's sometimes camera placement. Do you want a close shot like I have here? Do you want a wider shot like this so you can see gestures? And then there is eye contact. And this is, it goes both ways. The speaker, I have a camera set up, it's about 5 feet back. And I have to remember to look at the camera, because if I look down at my computer, then I've lost eye contact. But as a speaker, you want to be able to see the audience. And that's why I keep looking down at my computer so I can see the audience. Whoops, I want to stay here. Just got to remember how many buttons to push. Any other irritations?
Turning the tables on Nancy's comment about hearing sounds you don't want to, there's also not hearing sounds that you do want to, the audience reaction.
Yes.
Applause and laughter, especially.
That one we're still working on. Do we want to run 2 mics? Steve, at the contest last time, had a Bluetooth mic that put up really close, and it worked in practice really well. And it failed during the contest, and he didn't have a backup. And one time it's in Smile, I did have 2 microphones, one for the speaker and one for the audience. Still working on that the best way, because it's such a live room, we get so much echo, it's hard to understand. Very difficult one. I'll bring up a problem that we have, bandwidth. And it's usually specifically with Wi-Fi. Sometimes we can use 2 devices. We used to experiment with a laptop, and then we would use a phone as our second camera. It can chew up twice as much bandwidth that way. And it also has a tendency to feedback if you don't plug in a set of headphones or turn off or stop the audio. We have that option now, but we didn't at first. Here's one, PowerPoint. How do I share my PowerPoint if I'm in the room, if I'm at the live meeting? Yes, Terry?
That was my problem. I have to do a PowerPoint for my speech, and that was the one thing that I was just dying. So I just made it a regular sized page, got rid of the ribbon on top, and was just going to go through them like you go through when you're working on a PowerPoint? How are you supposed to do it?
How are you supposed to? There are several ways, probably. One, and we did this at the contest. I did this with Steve because he was giving a PowerPoint, and if his computer failed, which it had a tendency to do, he sent me the files, so the Zoom master can run your PowerPoint for you, and maybe that's a good idea. There's also, you can bring your own computer and you can be the Zoom master for the day. Now, this is specifically when you're in the live room, of course. You can send your HDMI out of your computer into an HDMI switcher, and that's what I'm using today. And that's why I can switch back and forth really quickly, because I'm actually switching. And the last is, you could disable your audio and have two machines running. But if you make a mistake, the feedback normally is nasty. One time it sounded really cool, but only one time. Most of the time the feedback is awful. I'm going to mention one other thing, the timer. When the timer is online and the speaker is live, if you can't see the screen, you're in big trouble. And we can reassign roles, but if this is the way life is going to be, we have to find a solution. So we have to either move the speaker so that the speaker can see the monitor, or move the monitor, or have several monitors so that the speaker can see the video monitor. And what about when the timer is in the room? We've had a lot of trouble with this one. We've tried to use cards, but we have a hard time telling green from yellow. Virtual background always works, but then you lose the audience. I can do the switcher thing, and if I push all the right buttons, I can do this really quick because I'm running this out of my switcher. And I guess I only have 3 slides on this, but look how this is green and this is yellow, and this is being generated directly. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. And if the lighting is bad, then we can't tell the difference between the green and the yellow, and I'm nearly out of time, but I'm going to finish this anyway. This is our current setup in Station Square. It's essentially a triangle with the audience in one corner, the lectern and the speaker in one corner, and the monitor in another corner, so we don't have to wrench our necks to watch one thing or the other. The speaker can see the monitor and can see the timer. I think so far with only one big screen monitor and 2 cameras, because we do like to have 1 camera on the speaker and 1 camera on the audience. That's our preferred setup in a room that we can't move the monitor. If you got a room where you can have 2 monitors, you're in much better shape. And there are 3, I'm going to call it 3 ways to switch cameras. And right now that seems to be the most difficult thing. Microphone, we just pass from person to person. Here's the first one, is doing it in Zoom. You can just select another camera from the menu. There are problems with that, and Steve will mention that, I believe, in the next speech. I believe that a piece of software called OBS Studio is probably the wave of the future for a lot of our clubs. We can use OBS as a front end to Zoom. And I can't really explain a lot about it today because it's going to be a whole 15-minute, 20-minute speech. But we can do switching, we can do picture-in-picture, anything you can think of you can do. You could probably do your PowerPoint presentation in OBS. It's all about how creative you are. And the final one, which is, well, that was the wrong button. My favorite, it costs a little more money. It's an HDMI switcher. I'm using this very switcher. This is the most least expensive, the very least expensive switcher that you can get. But you have to use HDMI switchers. That means HDMI and cameras. Which the good thing is the HDMI cameras are much better than web cameras. Just figuring out, and you want to send out clean video, which means you don't want the battery indicator at the top and the record button flashing, things like that. But it's really slick. One of the disadvantages is that it takes me about a half an hour to set everything up. But when we have it running right, it is slick because I can do the timer roll, I can switch back, I have me here, I can have, if I remember where all my buttons are, I can have another camera, I can have 3 cameras, I can have 4 cameras. COVID has changed our meetings. And it's time for us now to be prepared for hybrid meetings. And what it really takes is not theoretical knowledge, it takes practice every day to figure out which equipment works, because every room is different. If you're in a restaurant, noise is going to be a huge problem. Station Square, noise is a huge problem, and it's just the echo. But hybrid meetings are doable, and every one of our Toastmasters needs to know how to handle this stuff, because this is the wave of the future, and we all need to be Zoom/video experts. Thank you.